I'm Nigel Cooper, and today I'm taking a look at the Addictive Drums 2 software package by XLN Audio, but I'll be coming at it from a slightly different angle that will enable me to give you some insights into this incredible software. Of course, later on I'll be giving you a demonstration of Addictive Drums, both as a standalone piece of software as well as being integrated into your DAW. But there are some important things that I feel I should cover first, so you have a bit more background information about both the company and the software, which will help you appreciate Addictive Drums even more. XLN Audio are based in Stockholm, Sweden, and they've been going since 2005. Their main goal is a simple one: to develop the best musical creation tools with the best possible sounds. And after using Addictive Drums 2 for a few months now, I can confirm definitively that they've achieved that goal in spades. For the record, XLN Audio is co-owned by Max Martin, who is one of the most successful music producers and songwriters ever. Just look him up on Wikipedia and read through the long list of hit records that he's either written or co-written. Even though Max's role in the company is that of a passive investor, in case you're wondering, yes, he also uses Addictive Drums. In a nutshell, Addictive Drums 2 is a complete software drum production studio that features professionally recorded acoustic and electronic drum kits recorded at some of the world's best studios by professional session drummers and some of the most experienced engineers around. In other words, the sounds that come out of Addictive Drums software are nothing less than spectacular. Addictive Drums comes with a whole plethora of drum kits and sounds, and you can even add more by purchasing additional ADpaks with complete drum kits and production ready presets. You also have the ability to create your own custom drum kits by combining different kit pieces from different ADpaks. You can also buy MIDIpaks with both short beat phrases and complete songs that were laid down and recorded by professional session drummers. These organic beats and songs are a great way to get inspired with your songwriting. Of course, being MIDI, you can also edit, change and customize each and every drum hit to get them to fit the style of your own songs. At this point, I should point out that Addictive Drums is not a sampler that you can load your own samples into, thank goodness. I mean, why would you want to when XLN Audio have spent months recording an abundance of some of the best acoustic drum kits in the world, from the likes of Ludwig, Gretsch and Tama, with amazing classic snare drums such as the famous Black Beauty and the Terminator. And of course the Terminator was used on Nirvana's Nevermind album. XLN Audio recorded more modern kits also, again in top recording studio environments in acoustically perfect conditions with top session drummers, all recorded with tens of thousands of pounds worth of microphones and recording equipment with engineers who are at the top of their game. One such studio that XLN Audio used to record some of their ADpaks was United Recording, described as a sonic cathedral due to the drum room's amazing acoustics. So good in fact that it's been used by Madonna, U2, Mariah Carey, Elton John, Radiohead, R.E.M. and Tom Petty, to name but a few, and for good reason. The place just has a musical spirit and feel that makes the drums come alive. The studio makes drums sound rich, warm, lush and super clear and detailed. The United Pop Addictive Drums pack was recorded here, so it sounds amazing. This studio has been the first choice for an insane number of chart-topping artists such as Beck, the Beach Boys, John Mayer, Weezer and the king of pop himself, Michael Jackson. So if you want that iconic Studio A sound on your tracks, you should definitely check out the United Pop ADpak. I'll put a link in the description below for a short 2-minute documentary that XLN Audio filmed while they were recording drum samples there. Addictive Drums also used Fairfax Studios in Los Angeles, formerly known as Sound City, which has one of the most legendary recording rooms in the world. XLN Audio recorded 2 of their ADpaks there, Fairfax Volume 1 and Fairfax Volume 2, and they sound absolutely amazing. Fairfax Studios is also where the drums were recorded for Nirvana's Nevermind album, as well as the drums for Rage Against the Machine's debut album. Tom Petty's later records had the drums laid down there, and a whole host of other well-known bands and artists recorded their drums there too, so by using Addictive Drums Fairfax ADpaks, you'll be in good company. The quality of each and every recorded drum hit is as good as it gets. The proof is in the pudding, and I'll be demonstrating some of the kits shortly, but don't take my word for it. Addictive Drums has been used on records by Madonna, The Weeknd, Kenny Beats, T-, Eminem and Kanye West, to name but a few, and a whole bunch of other bands and artists too. So with this in mind, why would you want to load up your own samples? And while I'm on the subject of samples, yes, you can download various drum samples from numerous websites for free, but many of them are somewhat questionable, and depending on the site, you don't know how authentic any given sample is or what the sonic quality of it is either. Many free samples that you can download from the internet would have been recorded via an unknown path, and often with unwanted EQ and unknown preamps, and at what recording resolution nobody knows. As such, these questionable samples are coloured and often lacking in sonic quality. This is certainly the case with some of the samples that I paid to download from the KB6 website, where there are some instances where so-called Lin LM drum samples, for example, were in fact Lin drum samples and not LM1 samples at all, and some of them were from other exotic sources that weren't even Lin. With Addictive Drums, you don't have to worry about the original source of any given drum sample because XLN Audio recorded and produced all of them at studio-grade audio resolutions, and you can sleep easy knowing that any given sound in Addictive Drums will be absolute sonic perfection. The fact is, and some drummers will hate me for saying this, but quite a few artists use drum software packages such as Addictive Drums on their albums, and they only turn to a real drummer for their live performances, as that's what the audience expects to see at a concert. Empire of the Sun and The Weeknd are just two prime examples that uses drum software packages, drum machines or drum samples on their records, often with synth bass lines, but then they call upon a drummer and bass player for their live gigs. Addictive Drums 2 sounds totally organic and authentic for a number of reasons. In addition to the way they're recorded in top studios by top drummers with great sound engineers using thousands of pounds worth of equipment, each and every drum hit is recorded anywhere between 50 and 100 times, depending on the percussion piece being recorded. This means that if you line up 100 identical snare drum hits as a semi-quaver pattern in your DAW, with every hit set to the same velocity, you'll actually end up hearing 100 different snare drum hits and not just the same sample repeated over and over. Every time a real drummer hits a snare drum, there'll be a subtle difference in sound between each hit, not just in velocity, but also in the tones and resonances and other things in the sounds as well, due to the way the stick hits the drum in a slightly different place every time. It's little details like this that make Addictive Drums so realistic. Well, let's face it, it is real. These days, modern DAW software packages are capable of creating a programmed drum track that, when used in conjunction with a software package like Addictive Drums 2, would be indistinguishable from a track that had a real session drummer playing on it. Adjusting the quantize, human feel, subtle velocity changes, timbre, resonance, reverb, and so on and so forth yields authentic results that are identical to that of a real drummer. In the early days, it was a struggle to get a drum machine or software package to sound human, especially with the timing and human feel. This was okay if you wanted your drum track to sound like Dave Weckl, and this is a compliment to Dave's impeccable timing and accuracy, or even an 80s drum machine like a Roland 808 or Oberheim DMX, for example. But these days, musicians and producers expect realism, and they also want a whole lot more too. Don't get me wrong, there's still a huge place in modern music for drum sounds like the 808, DMX or Lin LM1, and Addictive Drums 2 has electronic drum ADpaks too, and you can MIDI them in with 100% quantize and no human feel to emulate that vintage 80s sound if you want that. Addictive Drums gives you every available possibility, from an electronic drum machine sound to a professional session drummer with real feel and other human characteristics, and when coupled with your DAW, it's so quick and easy to achieve. Be under no illusion, even though Addictive Drums is keenly priced, it's a professional tool used by professional recording engineers and well-known artists around the world. Regarding the cost, Addictive Drums 2 starts at around £135 or $185 in the USA, which includes 2 AD drum kit packs and a couple of MIDI packs, or you can buy other package options that include free AD packs, free MIDI packs and free kit pieces, or variations that come in 18 or 30 packs, or even the fully loaded pack that includes everything. If you decide to buy a basic pack that includes 2 kits, you can later buy additional AD packs for around £67 each. That's around $90 US. The MIDI packs come in at around £17 or $23. As usual, I'll put a link in the description below to XLN Audio's website so you can check it out for yourself. And for the record, this is not going to be an affiliate link, as I'm recommending Addictive Drums because I personally believe it's by far one of the very best and most complete drum production studio software packages available at any price. It really is that awesome, and I played drums in a band for a couple of years, so I can appreciate just how good it is. And it certainly sounds way better than I ever did as a drummer, that's for sure. Okay, so now that I've built it up, let me back it up by giving you a demonstration. For those interested in the technicals, I'll be switching from this lav mic that I'm wearing here, and I'll be moving over to this Sennheiser MK4 condenser mic that I'll be speaking into during the software demonstration tutorial. The drums that you'll hear coming from Addictive Drums 2 will be routed through the computer into this Antelope Audio Discrete 4 audio interface for perfect sound reproduction. So if you're playing this video back through decent speakers, preferably with a subwoofer, or at least something that's got a good bass response, you'll really appreciate the quality that you're about to hear. Okay, so without further ado, let me jump onto the computer and open up Addictive Drums so you can see and hear for yourself just how authentic, realistic and professional this drum studio software package is. Okay, so I've got Addictive Drums here on the dock. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to open it as a standalone application. Let me just hide the dock here so it's out of the way. So you can either open it as a standalone piece of software like this, or you can obviously open it within your DAW. Now this software will work in any DAW. In a moment, I'm going to be demonstrating it in Logic Pro, but it does work with any. Now there's a couple of reasons you would want to open it as a standalone piece of software. First is it just gives you a chance to click through all the various settings and parameters and really get to know the software and how it works. Another reason is if you're already a drummer and you own an electronic drum kit, like say one of the Roland range, for example, you might own a TD12, or one of the Yamaha kits or Alesis, or even some of the smaller pads like the Alesis Strike Pad Pro or the Yamaha M12 or the Roland one. You can basically plug a USB cable into the brain of your electronic drum machine and then into your computer, and then you will basically be able to play all the Addictive Drums sounds that you have in here. You've also got the MIDI control setup in here where you can customize it to any external kit or source, such as a keyboard. And doing this is really easy. You can actually create your own set here, although the Addictive Drums 2 standard will be what most people are familiar with. But if you want, you can simply click on these learn buttons for any given kit piece and press a key on your keyboard or hit a pad and it will memorize it. Okay, so let me just come out of here. So what I'll do is I'm just going to quickly run through the interface and then I'll open Logic and show you what I did with a little song a couple of days ago. So it's very intuitive. Up here at the top left, you've got this audio and MIDI setup section here. This is where you choose your output and your sample rate. Obviously, if I had it here to built-in output, this would be coming from the output of my iMac, but I've got it set to discrete because this is for my Antelope Audio Discrete Synergy 4 audio interface. And you have a test tone. And then let me just go through this main interface. So working from left to right, it's very intuitive. You just start on the left, you choose a kit, and then you explore it and go through all the various edit features. So on this main page here, the gallery, depending on the bundle you bought, if you just bought a basic bundle with a couple of kits, they will show up here. Or if, like me, you've bought a lot of kits, there will be quite a few of them here. Now, if there's quite a lot, you can see here that you can click on all these dots to scroll through them or go back to the beginning, or you can click on this view here so that you get smaller thumbnails with just 3 pages like I have here in this instance. Now, because I own all these kits, they're all basically showing up here. Let me just go back to this view. If there was a kit that you didn't own, at the top left here, there would be a license indicator saying that you've got to buy the license, and you can click on it to buy it. Because I own all of these kits, that license logo isn't showing up here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly go through some of the kits to show you what they have and give you a couple of quick examples. So we have this vintage Fairfax kit here and Fairfax 2, this black velvet one, some boutique mallets and some nice R&B kits, United Heavy, you can imagine what that will be, United Pop, a vintage dry. Let me just click on one or two of these just to give you a few examples. So if I click here, for example, it brings up the kit, and then you have these little demonstration sections down the left-hand side where you can preview it. like so. So let me just go back to the kits and carry on. Some percussion, a nice indie kit here. Again, let me just click on this one quickly, give you a few examples. And back to the kits. We've got this metal kit. This is absolutely insane. Okay, moving on quickly. We've got some excellent electronic drum machines in here. Lots of 808s and Lindrum machines and DMX, that kind of thing. Let me give you a couple of quick samples from in here. And the Lindrum, of course, one of my favourites. Okay, and just moving on a few more, we've got some funk kits here, modern jazz with sticks, modern jazz with brushes. Let me bring this one up and give you a little example of what's going on with this one. And back to the kits here. The Retroplex, a very old sort of vintage massive sound that you get from this one. And just a few more. We've got the Blue Oyster, again another old sort of vintage kit for that sort of Led Zeppelin sound. And what else do we have here? Black Oyster. And then we've got 3 really nice studio kits. Studio Progressive, I'd imagine that one is, Studio Pop and Studio Rock. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to go in here and pick this United Heavy and this Dry Punch so that I can just basically give you an indication as to what these do. So you start off with going through your kits, choosing a kit, and then you move along to this Explore tab, which takes you into it in a bit more detail, where you can actually play through some of these. So I'll just start with the Dry Punch. Again, there's other sounds in here. Okay, so with this, you've got some basic edit settings here just for putting together something very rough. Obviously, when you move further onto the kit page and the edit and effects pages, you've got a lot more stuff that you can do. But you can just create a basic mix here. Now, what I will say at this point is, on this edit page and the effects page, you'll notice that there's already an element of compression and distortion and EQ and reverb and stuff like that that's already been set up. And this is because all of these kits, no matter which one you choose, it could be one that's heavily processed, it could be one that has no processing, or some that just has a little bit of processing, a little bit of reverb compression with various overhead mic and room mic mixes. They've all been set up and mixed professionally by top studio engineers. So regardless of the kit that you pick, you can be assured that it's been set up professionally and it's going to sound perfect straight away. So any adjustments that you make here or on the edit page or the effects page is basically just going to be tweaking it to your own personal preference. But don't feel obliged because they have been basically mixed and set up professionally straight out of the box, so they're ready to go. But I will show you what you can do. So I'm just going to play this and just go through these settings here and show you what effects they have. So I can remove the kick. So that takes the kick out of it. And then I can have the kick as loud or as quiet as I want. Bring that down to something more reasonable and level. Same with the snare. That's the snare out. Quietly. Moderate. Very loud. And same for the hi-hats. You can see the hi-hat flashing away here where it's been hit. I'll take the hi-hat out. Quiet. Louder. And very loud. And then we've got the overhead mics and the room mics. Now, if you don't know about drums and how they are mic'd up professionally in the studio, the overhead mics would typically be two microphones about 2 or 3 foot above the drum kit, which is there to pick up the sounds from the crash cymbal here, the hat, and the ride cymbal and other rides and crashes that you might have around the top of the kit. That's what the overhead microphones do. So that's what this level controller here does. Now, the overhead microphones, not only are they going to pick up the crash and ride cymbals across the top, there is going to be a little bit of spill from the other drums, the toms and the snare. That's just the nature of miking drums up. It's impossible to put microphones just on the cymbals and pick up nothing else. But that's just how they work in professional studios. The room microphones would be a couple of microphones out front in the middle of the room pointing towards the kit. So they are there to pick up the room ambience as well as the kit, so you can mix in, make as wet or as dry as you like, the overhead mics and the room mics. So let me just dial those out completely, and then I'll press play and I'll bring them in so you can hear what they do. So as you can hear, that's pretty dry. Now I'll just bring in the overhead mic so that more of the cymbals will come in. In this case, it's just a hi-hat because there are no cymbals across the top. Let me just see if I can find something that has some cymbals. There we go, we've got a crash coming in there. If I turn the overheads quite loud, you'll hear these two cymbals crashing away quite loud, whereas if I take it out, they're still there, but they're very quiet. Let me bring them up again. So that's what you can do there. Back to the dry punch sound. Now I'm going to take out the room, and that's very dry sounding now. Now if I bring in some room microphones, you can hear more of the room tone. So that's what we can do there, just some basic settings. So once you've done that, you would then move on to the kit page, and here is where things start to get really good fun, because you've got your kick, snare, you can just click on them to sample them. Now, just for the record, the lower down you click, the quieter the sound, and then as you move up towards the top, it gets louder. Same with all of them. These sample sounds weren't just recorded once. When Addictive Drums did these, the professional session drummer that was hitting the snare to get the samples didn't just hit it once. He probably would have hit it anywhere between 20 and about 50 times at different velocities and slightly different places on the head. So when you actually program a beat and it's playing back in your DAW, every time a snare drum sounds, like this for example, now, those 4 or 5 snare hits that you just heard wouldn't have been the same sample. They would have all been different, and that emulates a real drummer for real. And also, any professional drummer will tell you that the lighter and quieter you hit a snare drum, you're hardly going to hear any snare buzz off the bottom. In fact, if you hit it so quietly, you won't even hear the snare buzz at all, because it won't be enough to trigger them. Whereas if you hit it louder, you're going to get a lot more snare buzz. So that just emulates that. Now, something else you can do in here, you might think, well, I like this kick, but I want to change the snare. Now, there's a few ways you can do it. You can either click load, and it brings up any available snares that you've purchased that are in your kit. I'm just going to cancel that. And same for the kick drum here. It will come up with all the kick drums that you have available. And again, same for the cymbals here. It will just bring up your cymbals as you click on them, and then you can choose any cymbal you like. So you might think this kick is good, but I'm not too keen on this snare. So what you can do is you can either click load, or you can click these triangles up and down and go through the various snare drums. So let me just go into the load. By default, it shows you the one that's loaded, but then you can go through and sample some other ones. So let me just sort of go back here and see what else I have. I've got this nice vintage Ludwig Black Beauty here, so I'm just going to put that in. So now we have this. And while it's playing, you can actually go in and check other kits out as well, other kit pieces. Okay, and you can do that again with the toms. You can click on the toms and load individual tom pieces, or when it comes to the toms, you can actually click set and you can actually change the entire set so they all match, which realistically, that's probably more likely what you'd want to do. Let me just go in here and see what else we have. It's a heavy one. So that is basically how that one works. And same for the cymbals. So let me just go in here and have a look at this crash here. You got some nice Sabians and Zildjians. Lots of choices here when it comes to cymbals. I'll pick that darker one there. Another interesting thing you can do here, you can actually layer up these sounds. So you might think, I want this snare drum to be doubled up with another percussive piece. So I can click on one of these 3 flexi boxes here and click load. And I can go in here and I can pretty much choose anything I want. So let me just go up to the top here and choose another snare. So I could add that one to it, for example. Now, if I click OK, I've got that snare drum over here and the Ludwig here. And if I click on this little link tool and drag it and drop it onto this, it will ask me if I want to link it and how I want to link it. So I want to link it so every time I get a regular snare hit, it will sound with this snare here. Or you could have it so it goes with the rim shot, but I will just have it for the regular hit. So now when we play it, we're going to get both this snare and that snare sounding at the same time. And I can adjust the level using the level slider. So if I take it all the way out, we're only hearing the Ludwig snare. So we can do that, and if we want to thicken it up even more, I can go to this Flexi 3 here and go to, say, a kick drum. Let me just sort of go along and choose a nice electronic kick. What else do we have here? Okay, I will go back and have the 808. So I can put the 808 in there, and then with this kick drum, I can drag that over and simply link it to this 808. So now when I play it, I'm going to get both of these kicks, and again, I can mix it in. So I can just bring a nice little amount there just to give extra weight, or I can take it higher. And I can change this at any time, so I can go back in and pick something else. Let me just go back here and see what else I have. I can pick that one, for example. And I can mute this. And if I want to take it away, I just simply click on this triangle and unlink it. So you've got great scope here for customizing the kit to anything you want. Again, same for the hi-hats. We've got some brilliant hi-hats in here. Again, from Sabian and Zildjian. There's lots of really good vintage and modern hat sounds as well. So let me just pick that one. Okay, so once you've customized your kit and you've got it all exactly how you want it, you then move next onto the edit page. And as like I said, depending on the kit that you pick here, in this case I've got the United Heavy, they will have been mixed professionally already by an audio engineer. So in here, these have already been pre-mixed and set up. So I'll just quickly go through what we've got here. You can click on any of the drum pieces that you have down here, and then once you click it, all the stuff above will change. So I'll just go through a few of them. So with the snare drum, for example, you've got levels here for the overhead mics and the room mics, and this determines how much of the effect goes through to the overhead and room levels. Next, we've basically got this response section here and a pitch controller, as well as the usual ADSR for attack, decay, sustain and release times. And you've also got here a low and high cut filter and a tone designer. So you've got lots of scope for things here. Let me just go back to the kick drum. Now for the kick and the snare, down here you've got two microphones set up when these were recorded professionally in the studio, with a mic on the front and a mic on the back. And for the snare, you've got a mic on the top and a mic on the bottom. So if you basically drag it further towards the bottom, you're going to pick up more of the snare sound in. And you've also got a control here to adjust the amount of snare buzz. So let me just play that. So as I drag it to the left, you're hearing more of the top skin and less of the snare at the bottom. Whereas over to the right, you're getting more of the bottom sound, and same for the kick drum. Again, you can mix between the two. And then on the next row down, we have this noise filter, so you can add in various effects of tube mics and different things there. Then we've got the compression and distortion, so you can add in some distortion and compression here. And then moving on, we've got the EQ. You simply drag around on here to make any EQ settings that you want. And then we've got the tape and shape, so we've got a tape simulator. And we've also got something for the transients and saturation. And then finally, we've got the output, trim, and the sends. So that is what you can do there. Now, you can actually just turn off these sends and inserts and just leave everything and not have any effects going through. So you can keep everything dry if you want. So moving next, we've got the effects page. There's two channels here that go to the sends. They're called delay because they've basically got delay and reverb on each. So you've got two. So as you can see here, the snare drum is being sent through to both of these channels. So if I wanted the kick drum to also go through to these, I can simply add as much send and make it as wet or as dry. You know, it's kind of like parallel compression. You can mix it in as much or as little as you like. So the top one is obviously for the top channel strip, and the bottom one here is for the bottom channel strip. So I'm just going to take that out and turn that send off. So at the moment, we just have send for the snare drum. So any adjustments that get made here, and again, these have been set up professionally already, but you can just tweak it from that and change it as you like. At the top, we basically have this section here for the feedback and swing, and we've got a mix from delay to reverb. So all the way over to the right is just reverb, and to the left it basically adds that kind of ping pong delay effect. Let me just put that back for a moment. And then we've got the reverb here. We've got different size plates and chambers and rooms and that kind of thing. And then you can make all the adjustments here also. Then finally, we've got the EQ here. And we've got that replicated twice. So let me just play this. And remembering that at the moment, it's only the snare drum here that has something going to these sends. So that's the only instrument that's going to be affected. And then I'll adjust the send mix here. So that's how that works. So you can basically just fine tune everything along here, including the overheads and room mics. So you've got a massive amount of scope there for doing things. So let me just go on to the final page here, which is the beats page. Now this is excellent because, as you can see, you've got literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of preset beats. You've either got beats which could be between a couple of bars and 12 bars, quite a few bars long. Some of them are even entire songs. And then within those, you've also got fills and various other elements. So some of these beats are just absolutely incredible. And all of these have been recorded by a professional session drummer on a very high-end electronic drum kit, probably one of the very top of the range, Roland TD range, TD50 or whatever they're up to now. And they've actually been recorded using these kits with a professional drummer. So if you use any of these in your DAW, the human feel and the velocity and the timing will be very human because they were all played in by humans. So you can select one here and then just hit play down here to preview it. And you can actually search by library. So you can actually go into this section here and choose via rock songs, for example. And this is going to come up with literally entire songs. And then within that song, you've got the variants. So you can basically pick the variants of it. The chorus section, for example, or the middle eight, the verse. So you've got all sorts of scope here for being able to pick anything you want. Let me just go back to all. You can choose by category, funk, metal, soul, blues. So let me just go in and see what I'll pick a reggae song here. We've got some various reggae sections in here. I'll just stop that. Funk, let me just go and pick a funk beat. Let me just sort of go back to all, and you can actually put in the tempo and time signature. So I could basically put in the time signature here, and it will only bring up beats in that time signature. Finally, you've got these preset sections here as well. So if you've got a song in your head, or you've already laid something down and you need the drum part to go with it, this is where you can choose one of these presets. So if you just choose A, for example, this section here just represents one bar of music, one measure of music in 4/4 time. So the kick drums, we've got one on beat 1 and one on beat 3, and then we've got snares on 2 and 4, with hi-hats just counting in at 1, 2, 3, 4. So this would sound like this. I'll give you another example here. So that's with just the bass drum, the kick and the snare. So we got dum ta, dum ta. Now, if I wanted to have something else, if I put another kick here, we're going to have dum dum ta. So then here for dun dun ta, I could put another kick here. Take that back out again. And I might want more hi-hats going along in a faster pattern. So we would have... I could put another kick here. So depending on what you do, I could even basically remove that snare and put it there, for example. So depending on the kind of rhythm you want, you can actually mess around with this and it will get you in the ballpark. So finally, I'm just going to come over here to this section. I've already covered it briefly. We have the map window. This is where you can basically do all your customization and you can see where everything is and make all sorts of adjustments in here if you own an electronic kit or you want to sort of map out your MIDI keyboard in a different way. Okay, I'm just going to quickly come back to this edit page just to show you something really good. You might get to a section here and you might not know what it means. You think, well, tape and shape, what does this do? So what you can do here is you can just click up here and go to the Addictive Drums 2 manual, and it will open up the manual in whatever PDF reader you have. And then what you can do is I just do a quick search here and type in tape and shape, and it will go straight to it and find it for me. So now what I can do, I can just quickly have a little read through and get an explanation as to what this actually does. So it will tell you here what the tape selection does, what the drive knob does here, and what the shape selection does. So you can just have a read through, and then it tells you about the saturation. So you can actually read through the manual and get a really good idea as to what that does. So that's a really cool thing there. Okay, so that is pretty much it. It's really easy and intuitive to use. There's two major pieces of drum software. What I don't really like to call this a plugin. For me, plugin is just too small a word for it. It's more like a complete drum software studio package. And there's two major ones that most of the professional recording studios around the world use. This is one of them, and it's one that I really love because this interface is just so nice and easy to use. You just work from left to right as you go through it. Over here, you can actually check things in the preset browser as well. And you can also save your own personal presets in here for custom presets to recall at a later date. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to quit this and I'm going to open Logic Pro, and I'm going to show you how it works in Logic Pro and the various ways of laying down drum tracks within that. So let me do that for you now. Okay, so I've got Logic open here, and I just want to quickly show you how you can set up Addictive Drums so each of the individual kit pieces go to their own channel strips within Logic, and why you might want to do that. So if you're a Logic user, you'll know that you just click on File and go to New, and you'll be presented with this dialog box. We're going to click on this details triangle here just to make sure we've got all this additional information. We're going to select software instrument, but we're going to change the instrument default patch to, we're going to go down to AU Instruments and then to XLN Audio, Addictive Drums 2. And instead of choosing a regular stereo out pair, we're going to choose multi-output. You can leave the number of tracks at 1 and your audio output at default, and then click on Create. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just click X on the keyboard to bring up the mixer down here. And then we're going to click here on the Addictive Drums plugin. And the first thing I'm going to do here is just click on Kit, and in here you've got all the individual channel strips, and as I've mentioned already, you've got these arrows at the bottom so you can send them all to their individual channel strips. So I'm just going to select separate out pre-fader. You can select post fader, and if you do that, that means that all these faders within Addictive Drums will still work. I'm going to select pre-fader, so these won't have any effect because I'm going to be doing it all here in Logic. Now, to give you a tip to save going through them all one at a time, you can hold down the command key while you click on this, and then it does all of them. Same for the overhead and room mics. I'm going to hold down the command key to bring those two up, and then finally the bus, I will do that too. So we've now got Addictive Drums set up there, and to finish it off in Logic, you simply come down here and click on this little plus sign. We're going to do this 13 times because there's 13 extra channel strips that are going to come up here. Now, the kick, snare, hi-hat, all these channel strips along here correspond with aux 1, aux 2, aux 3, all these auxiliary channels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename these auxiliary channels to correspond with these so I don't get lost and I know exactly where I am. So I'm going to double click on aux here and type in kick, go to the next one, snare, hi-hat, tom 1, tom 2, tom 3, tom 4, flexi 1, flexi 2, flexi 3, and then we've got the overhead mics, the room mics, and the bus. I'm going to call this one AD bus, just so I know it's the Addictive Drums channel as opposed to any other buses that I might set up. Okay, so we've got all this set up now, so any of these individual drums are going to come through onto these individual channels, and to demonstrate that I'm just going to quickly click on beats. I'm going to go to let me just choose funk, time signature of 4/4. Let's be boring. Let me just pick an interesting beat here. Okay, we have that one. I'm going to click on this funk swing beat and just drag it and drop it up onto this timeline here. And I will import the tempo as well. And let me just make this a little bit bigger. Just drag this down a little bit and maybe out a little bit here as well. Okay, let me just put a loop around that by pressing U on the keyboard. I'm just going to bring this down a bit because I know it's going to be a little bit hot. Let me just bring that down to about 8. That should do it. Okay, so if I go back to the kit page here, you can see that the kick, snare and hats, for example, are coming through on their own channels here, kick, snare and hats. So that is basically how you set up Addictive Drums if you want them to all come through onto their own individual channels. Now, a reason you might want to do that is so that you can put effects onto individual kit pieces. So, for example, the snare drum here, I can come in and maybe put in a Space Designer reverb, and that will only sound on the snare drum. Let me just reduce that. So that is exactly why you would want to basically send it all to individual channel strips. So that's how you set that up if that's how you want to do it. So if I just go back to Addictive Drums, within here on the actual edit page and effects page, you can actually turn off the effects in here. So if you don't want these, you can turn off the inserts and the effects. Again, likewise, you can just sort of switch them off here. So they're going to be coming through here into Logic with no processing, no compression, no effects, nothing. So you can basically add all your own effects in here and build it up using Logic's plugins if that's the way you want to go. Okay, so let me just quit this one. I won't save that. Okay, so now I've got a separate project open that I prepared in advance of this video tutorial. This is a song that I'm working on, but rather than have the whole song, which might be a bit boring for you, I've just basically chopped out one of the choruses and one of the verses and stripped the lyrics away. So we just basically have the synthesizer part, a synth bass, this little bit of percussive anvil hit, and 2 AD2, AD standing for Addictive Drums. So we've got Addictive Drums, a preset beat that I picked, and then we've got Addictive Drums, which I call M12 because I recorded this in live using a Yamaha DTX multi-12 drum pad system. So let me just play a little bit of the song so you can hear what type of music it is. I'll first solo off just these 2 synthesizer parts for you. Have a listen to this. Okay, so that's something that I recorded in live using my Nord Lead A1 synthesizer. I recorded it in twice so that I could pan one hard left and another one hard right. The next thing that we have, if I solo this, I played this in via a MIDI keyboard using this Arturia plugin for a Minimoog bass line. So this is what the bass line sounds like. Let me just bring this up a little bit here. So that's that. And then next I've got this anvil hit. I just went to a local blacksmith actually because this is quite a electronic, industrial, heavy kind of track. And I just like the idea of having somebody hit an anvil with a big, large hammer. So this is what I recorded with a portable recording device and a microphone. That's quite literally all it is. And I basically chopped it up and put it in time with the music. Now, if I go to the Addictive Drums drum beat, this is one of the pre-made beats that you've got in Addictive Drums. Nothing I played, it's just one of the pre-made ones. Have a listen. Which fits nicely, it's pretty close. And then the one that I recorded and played in live using a Yamaha DTX Multi-12 sounds like this. And if I unsolo that one and leave that one muted, this is how the whole song sounds together. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly point out a couple of other things here. Some of you may have noticed that I've got some additional plugins here, and any professional mastering engineers will be looking at this stereo out and cringing with what I've done here, but there's a reason for this. So let me just explain what I've done and what they are. So I've already explained that with Addictive Drums, you can set all these individual channels out via these drop-down arrows to have all your individual drum pieces go to individual channels within Logic. In this instance, I simply have a stereo pair going out. So that's what I've done there. And as you can see, I've got a little bit of compression and EQ and even some tape saturation and a few effects that are already within the Addictive Drums software. But in addition to that, I've added a couple of extra plugins. I'm going to explain what they are and why I've done it. So I've added a little bit of EQ here. Now, I know typically an EQ would be used to cut more than boost, especially in the low frequency area here, where you would generally cut low frequencies out of even the bass guitar, electric guitar, piano, just so you don't get that muddying up of too much bass rumbling around down here. But I've done the opposite. I've actually boosted it because I wanted that kick drum to have some extra slam and depth. Now, I could have done that within Addictive Drums. I could have just gone to the EQ here and sort of pulled it up and messed around in there. But the reason I wanted to do it as a separate plugin is just to show you that you can. And secondly, there's nothing wrong with having 2 or 3 EQ plugins within the same chain. Some people like to have a couple of EQ plugins so they can concentrate on maybe the bass frequencies for one plugin, and then they'll have another one directly underneath it where they can then concentrate on the upper mids or something like that. So that's not an unusual technique. So I just wanted to show you why I've done that. The next plugin I've got here is the Baby Audio tape emulation plugin. Now, the reason I put this one on the drum tracks is because I just love the way this glues the drums together with the compression and that natural sort of tape sound. It just sounds really good. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly turn off this EQ and tape and play this soloed, the drum track, just so you can hear what they're doing. So when I switch on the EQ, you'll notice that the kick drum suddenly has a lot more weight and slam at the bottom end. And when I turn on the tape emulator, then I just get that natural, lovely tape simulation. So let me play it and watch out for me switching them on here and have a listen. Okay, that's what I've done there. Now, over here on this channel, on the stereo out, I normally wouldn't put anything on here. I treat mixing and mastering as 2 entirely separate things. So typically what I would do, normally anyway, if I'd written a song, I would typically export that entire mix out into a high-resolution stereo audio file and then import that stereo audio file into a new project, literally just as a stereo audio file. And at that point, I would start adding things onto it. Again, here, I've got tape compression only a little bit. It's only dialed up to 30%. This is kind of like a parallel compression thing. So I've only dialed in a little bit here, and I've got this glue compression down. So it's only subtle. I've also got compression on here. Let me just move this to the side. Again, compression is something that I would typically always use at the mastering stage with a separate file, and I've also got a limiter here as well. So these are 3 plugins that I would typically have if I was to export the complete mix into a separate stereo audio file and re-import it. This is the kind of thing I would have on there. Now, the reason I put them in here is simply for the purposes of speed, so I don't have to go through all the exporting and importing as a separate mastering project. That's why I've stuck them here, just so you can hear this song in all its glory, how it would sound if it had been mastered out. Now, I'm just going to point out a few things that I did for this track that I played in live. I did change the kit around a little bit here. I've got this lovely kick drum, but what I've also done is added this electronic Lindrum. So they both sound together, and I've got a lovely thick bass kick sound. Because it's quite an industrial electronic song, I wanted to have a really weighty bottom end. And for the snare, I've got this lovely cracking Gretsch snare, but I've also added an electronic DMX snare to go with it. So they both sound together. So you've got 2 snares and 2 kicks just to make the drum sound really thick and kind of industrial. Okay, so that's how I basically played in the live drums. I literally had a USB cable going from the Yamaha M12 into the computer, and I played it in live. Now, a tip here, we have got in Logic at the top this low latency monitoring mode button, and I turned that on when I was playing these drums in live. So if you've got a Roland kit or a Yamaha kit or an Alesis, anything like that, I'd recommend turning this low latency on so you're not going to get any latency. You can just turn it on while you do the recording and then turn it off so you can hear it with all the effects plugins. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually mute this one and unmute this one. And I'm just going to go into Addictive Drums so I can show you how I came up with this beat. So the first thing I'm going to do is, let me just select this and delete it. And then I'm going to open up Addictive Drums. I'm already on the beats page. Earlier on in the video, I did mention these sort of presets here, and this is an ideal place for this, because if I just, let me lose this for 1 second, and that's all muted. If I just play this from about here. So you can hear the synthesizer's got this do-do-da kind of sound going on. So that's what I want to basically have the drum beat as. So if I select this preset A, then I can actually put in the kick beats where I know they would be. So that's going to be dun-dun there and dun-dun here. So if I just play this, let me see how that's going to sound. Right, so that's not quite right there. Let me just bring that one back to there. And that snare drum is going to have to be there. That's it. Now that's going to fit the song perfectly. So what I can do is I can grab this heavy beat 02 here, drag it up and put it here on the timeline. I'm going to drop it there. I'm not going to import the tempo because I don't need it. Now let me just see if this is lined up correctly. Which it is. Now I can basically either loop this out and get it to fit the whole song, or I can just do it in individual bits. If I, let me just undo that. If I double click on this here, it's going to bring it up here, so I can then open it up and show you more about what it's actually doing. So here it is. Let me just put a loop around that. If I solo it. Okay, now at the end, if I didn't want to have this tom here, I could get rid of it. So I can just literally highlight it there and delete it. So it's not going to be there. So when it gets to the end of this phrase, it won't have that beat. So if I wanted to copy this and paste it across, we're going to have this. And again, there is a crash symbol there. If I didn't want to have that in, I can just delete it. So we'll have this. So if I unsolo that and put it back to around here. And again, you can sort of change other things. So on this bit, oops, let me just double click that and bring it back up. Just want to see this one. Right, let me just sort of click on that snare and add another one in here and here. And then if I copy this first one and paste it in there, we will have this. So that is quite literally how I managed to build up that beat. And then you can go in and edit, add and delete. If you use Logic or any DAW, you'll know how MIDI works. So I'm just going to mute that one and unmute this one, my original one. Again, if I double click on this, this is the entire piece using the Yamaha that I played in myself. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's how you use Addictive Drums 2 within Logic, either bringing them all in with their own channel strips or, like I have in this instance, just as a stereo pair. Okay, so that brings me to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you got something out of it. But honestly, I can't recommend Addictive Drums 2 enough. It is just so amazing. The drum sounds that are all sampled are just absolutely top drawer. And as you can see, the user interface is just so easy to use. And they've left you with every available option. You can bring them all in as individual channel strips, as a stereo pair. You can use the effects processing that they have on board, or you can use the ones in Logic. The choice is entirely yours. Okay, thanks for watching and hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.